Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening. We're just glad that you are. This is the Delaware High School Football Pod presented by Websites for Sports, and we're the only media outlet dedicated exclusively to high school football in the first state. It's available wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter, or X as they call it now, at DELHS Football, and on Facebook at the DELHS Football Pod. On today's show, we're going to recap Week 9, do our usual top performers, top performances, talks about the playoff scenario as we look ahead to week number 10 games, and then get you out of here as we rest up for week number 10. We apologize for the delay of the podcast. I'll take the blame for that. My son and I were up visiting Springfield College as he begins to explore the possibilities of where he might continue his education. Only a junior, but we figured we'd get a head start. And so the open house was this morning. We traveled back this afternoon. It's now Sunday night as we are recording. So we appreciate your patience and hope we get just as many listeners as ever before. We want to talk about Websites for Sports. That's websites, the number 4 sports.com, where you can get all your schedule information, location of games, links directly to Google Maps. You can set it up so that you get alerted when your favorite teams change their schedule, add games, take them away, change a date, location, all that fun and good stuff, and new and improved stats that they have added. And so we've already seen coaches take advantage of that. And so coaches, if you haven't checked it out, please do. It's made for ease, and the coaches don't have to put it in. You just need to assign somebody to put the stats in, and it helps us, and it's great for all the kids to be able to see their stats. Again, that's websites, the number 4 sports.com, started by Brian Rutter nearly 2 decades ago now. And not quite sure how we all did it before. And then again, I don't know how I got around town without a GPS on my phone, but we managed, and we're spoiled to have Websites for Sports, and we're spoiled here on the podcast that they are one of the sponsors. We appreciate it. A couple of housekeeping things. If you haven't heard already, Early College High School has forfeited their last 2 games. They had several kids who were academically ineligible. And normally we wouldn't talk about that, Marty, but I bring it up because at that school, academically ineligible means you have an 85 or lower. And I'm not sure if that's by class or cumulative or how that is. But we want to say that because it's out there. We're not, it's out there that's the reason that the roster was reduced. And so we just wanted to clarify and in some ways give credit that they hold their kids to such high standards, but at the same time, make sure the public doesn't realize that they have a bunch of kids getting Fs and that's why they're off. That's not the case at all. So Early College High School has forfeited their final 2 games. They did get their first win. They got a win this year. So that was a wonderful thing to go into the offseason with. And they'll be back next year, I'm sure, as well. The other big news, the best kept secret, or worst kept secret, depending on how you look at it and who you ask, is that Newark Charter High School is going to start football next fall. They had a press conference at the stadium on Friday. I was not able to attend due to a Special Olympics event that I was running downstate, but the Newark Post was there. If you haven't seen the story yet, you can go to newarkpostonline.com and check it out. But it is it's a big move, Marty, for a school that's going to have nearly 1,000 kids in it next year. It's one of the, I think I was reading somewhere, if you look at their school from top to bottom with all their schools, it's like the 4th or 5th biggest school district in the state.
Right.
That's how many kids they have there going. There's going to be some pros, there's going to be some cons, and there's going to be some questions that I have. I'll let you comment first, Marty, and then I'll tell you my thoughts.
Well, the funniest thing is you said the worst kept secret, that the fact that you said they held the press conference in the stadium. Usually you announce a football program before you do anything else. These guys had already built the stadium, which was your worst kept secret coming. Yeah. So it's already, as I've heard, it's already lined. It already has the yard markers.
So on it. It certainly is.
This is good. I mean, it's always good when another school comes in. I heard from some public school coaches who were not thrilled. They're like, this is another one that's going to draw away from the public schools. And most likely in my area, the Red Clay area, it's going to draw kids who now have another option. That's the drawback. The good thing is for them, I mean, hey, they're starting a football program. They've got a good sports program. They've had a strong baseball team. We've seen them be competitive in basketball. Girls basketball, they've got everything but football. And I think I read where it's right in the middle of a 2-year cycle of schedules. So I almost want to say it's almost definite to me. If I were them, I'd start with a JV schedule in year 1, work my way up, and then schedule all the teams you need to do to get into whatever. By that point, Dia will have decided Dave Collins and his group will have decided where they fit in as far as class 1, 2, or 3.
Mhm.
But I think that would be the wisest move. DMA did that way back when they started their program. Odessa jumped in kind of feet first. They went with an all freshman class against varsity programs, and their
And
pluses
scheduled
and
Middletown.
minuses. Yes, that's right. That's right. So I think overall this is good. It's another school in the state that's playing football, and it'll be interesting to see where they slot in and how quickly they're able to get going. You look at a school like Odessa that just opened up, and all of a sudden they're competitive in with a lot of these teams. Not so much lately, but I think that's more being worn down. Which Newark Charter will go through the same growing pains,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Mhm.
But all in all, a positive for the sport.
So my first thought was this, is that now there will be no football teams in the Christina School District. But then I rethought it. And I say that nothing against any of the 3 school districts or the schools in the Christina School District, but their numbers are significantly low and have been. And we're talking under 35, maybe dressed. But then I started thinking about it. You know what? I'm not sure that the students that would be going to those 3 high schools, if Newark Charter didn't have football, are going to go to Newark Charter now that they do have football. And I'm not sure how to explain it other than I have a sense of what goes on there because I cover them for the Newark Post.
Right.
And I've always said, and again, I say this with all due respect to all 3 football coaches in all 3 programs. And I think the 3 coaches, if they were honest with me, would agree with me that if you're a parent and you're that serious about the sport of football, you've probably found an alternative place to go and have your son play football. Based solely, it's no secret that the Glasgow and the Christiana high school records have been very low in the past few years, to the point, at some point where you worry about them finishing a season. And until recently, till Jody Russell took over Newark, they weren't far behind, but they've made a rebound. They've made a turnaround. And so I'm not disrespecting any of those 3 schools. I'm trying to look at this objectively. I'm a big fan of those 3 schools because I'm the beat writer basically for them for sports. So I'm not sure that it's going to take students away from the Christina School District. The more I thought about this, I had a 10-hour round trip drive to Springfield yesterday and today. I had a lot of time to think. And so I'm not sure it's going to affect those schools. What I'm worried about, Marty, is right now there's a policy that Newark Charter has that you have to live within 5 miles of the school.
Oh,
as far as I know, that has not changed. It is also a complete lottery. In other words, it doesn't matter who your parents are, how much money you make, what race you are, what religion you are, what your abilities are. There's no test to get in. And it's like pulling out of a hat, literally. Because I've known some very affluent families who can't get their kids in there because those kids' names don't come out of the hat.
right.
And so I don't think there's a policy that 1 out of 10 of those kids has to be 6'3" and 275 pounds with a lot of football experience. And so I think about the charter school of Wilmington. They have a test to get in, so it kind of narrows down their population, but they don't have a boundary. And so I think of it kind of like when Mike Krzyzewski got any player he wanted back in the day. You had to be a certain level of education, but you could come from anywhere in the world. And that's kind of what Charter of Wilmington has, And again, they're still playing in Class 1. It's not like they've won 25.
And I believe you have to interview to get into Charter of Wilmington as well. It's DMA as well.
Correct. Newark Charter School, that's not the case. The best that I understand. So I'm a little concerned, I guess, about how they're going to get a football team that's going to compete even at the Class 1A level, because again, they're not, football players are not common people. They have a great track program and a great cross country program. Steve Cinco's done an incredible job, but more people can run track than are willing and able to be on a football team. And so that's my kind of, let's wait and see. I think it was inevitable. I think it's definitely going to have more people apply to go to the school there right now, from what I read, there's like 3,000 people on the waiting list.
3,000 kid
3,000
wait list.
And I think all 3,000 go back in the hat each year. I don't think
my
it's
God.
like you've been on the wait list for 7 years, so you keep moving up. And again,
Right.
if anybody feel free who goes to that school to correct me, and we'll make the corrections.
Yep.
You know that we're more than willing to admit when we're wrong. But again, this is what I've read, what I've understood in the past, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's my concern is, is the football program going to be good enough to attract good players from the past, in the future, I should say.
Right,
Unlike in the past, when if you wanted to play football, Newark Charter wasn't an option, unless you wanted to play unified flag football, which some kid did, So it's just going to be interesting to see. I wish them nothing but the best of luck. I think it's great. I think they're talking about having a marching band. They're going to have cheerleaders. It's going to be the piece as I think the headmaster described during the press conference. It's the piece that's missing from that high school that every other high school gets, no matter how good or bad your football team is. You got a game on Friday night or Saturday morning, and it's going to bring Friday night games back to the Newark area.
Yep.
Now that they're back and they have lights and it is a beautiful stadium. It's great facility. Parking. Well, now parking's not an issue because it'll be on a Friday night when the whole school parking lot's empty. So that's not going to be an issue. So, I wish them nothing but the best of luck. But my initial thought that it's going to kill the Christina School District high school football programs, it may impact them. It's not going to kill them like I originally in my mind was thinking. But it is going to be interesting to see if Newark Charter is even going to be able to play at the level of the Christina School District schools down in that Class 1A, except for Newark's in Class 2. Given the fact that they have these parameters that you have to live within 5 miles, which means you didn't play for MOT football, probably. You might not have played for Newcastle football. Again, you're pulling from a very limited group of housing complexes and neighborhoods. And so it's just going to be interesting to see. I wish them nothing but the best of luck. But it is going to be interesting.
And if they start cranking out 6'3", 270 pounders, we can have another show dedicated to their lottery system. If opening day turns up and they got like a 6'3", 285-pound line, we get some questions about the lottery.
Yeah. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I wish them the best of luck,
It will be.
and I hope it turns out great. So anyway, all right, let's go back to where there are football teams. Start with our recaps. We're going to start with Polytech and Brandywine. Marty, one of my 3 games that I got wrong on being on the picks. No, 2 games that I got wrong being on the picks with Benny and Trey this week. So Polytech 24-21. Polytech moved to 9-1 technically because they've got the forfeit from ECHS next week. So they are the District 2 champs. They're in the playoffs for the first time. They've got more wins than ever. With 9, their only loss came to Indian River back in week 3. And so, Marty, Polytech is the Cinderella story of why they created the 3-class system.
They are. And it almost looked like Brandywine was going to climb back into it because they had a 21-8 lead going into the fourth quarter of this game. And all of a sudden, the wheels just fell off for them, and Polytech just couldn't miss with their run and their pass game. They got 2 TDs from Noah Walker in the fourth quarter. Actually, he scored all 3 of their touchdowns, all 3 touchdown runs, and they converted. And this was the game. They converted all 3 2-point conversion attempts, which resulted in the 24-21. So this was a phenomenal comeback effort. Isaac Balzarak has been doing a great job as the quarterback. He's really managed the team efficiently. He doesn't throw a ton. They're mostly a running team, but Noah Walker has been great for them on the ground. And they have the 1 loss to Indian River, but all in all, a phenomenal season. Hats off to them. Their first ever championship and playoff appearance in football ever, the district title being the championship. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. We know that we'll keep talking later on, but we know that them and Tatel will be the 1 and 2 seeds, so they wouldn't be able to meet until the finals. But it's an exciting time if you're a Polytech student. It's one of those schools we always talked about in the past that they never really had a ton of success, and now they've got students coming out to the game. They've got pep rallies, and now they're going to be one of the top 2 seeds in the 1A playoffs. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, they've done a great job with the football program. The athletic director there, the head coaches, or the head coach, the assistant coaches, just a really nice. It's a nice feeling for them, and they should feel good about what they've been able to do there. And for Brandywine, remember, this is the team Marty won 0 games last year.
Yeah,
5-4 this year, 3-2 in the district. They've still got a game left. And so, it's going to be interesting to see. They've got St. Andrews left. St. Andrews with a big win, unexpected big win, I think, in Seaford. But anyway, that's another discussion. But anyway, so, I think it's just great for them. And so
I agree.
congratulations to Polytech and all the players there for that. And we wish them, like everybody, the best luck in the playoffs. So they've clinched District 2 down in Class 1A. All right, move on to Middletown beating St. Mark's 35-10. Marty, we haven't talked a ton about Middletown this year, but, we kind of have an unwritten policy here. We don't talk about games that are played against teams out of state because we don't know a lot about them, which Middletown did. We usually don't recap blowouts. Middletown was involved in a lot of them on the plus side, but we don't want to ever not mention somebody for the sake of not mentioning them. And so Middletown with a nice win over St. Mark's. Middletown's not going to be the Class 3A District 1 champ. Sally's has clinched that. But Middletown's hoping to at least be the second team in the district. They're going to be in no matter what. But again, for those of you who aren't aware, the first two teams in each district in Class 3 and Class 1 get automatic bids into the playoffs, and then it's ranked based on point indexes. So they're in either way. So that they're 7-2, 3-1 on the season in the district, and so the Cavaliers are about where everybody thought. Although I don't think anybody thought they would win Class 3A District 1. I think everybody, I shouldn't say it, thought Sally's would win it.
Right.
We thought Middletown would have won
Would
it.
be the winner,
and they didn't. That was the only negative thing, I guess, for lack of a better word.
And we thought the same thing last year, that Middletown would win Class 1A, 3A1, and it went to Apo.
Yep.
So Middletown is not doing well when it comes to district titles, but their seasons are phenomenal.
Right.
Matt Priestley in this one. This was a real, just to set the stage here, it's a real slog of a game. I was getting basically play-by-play reports from the stadium, and Middletown and St. Mark's just couldn't seem to get anything going in the early going. I believe it may have even been 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Then Middletown got going. Of course, Matt Priestley, 7 receptions for 106 yards as a touchdown. And the person I was communicating with, I had said before the game, I said, watch out for Austin Troyer. I said, this kid is a player. And I said, what'd you think of Austin at halftime? And they were back, wow. So I'm guessing he looked good. He's a kid, not always the greatest stats, although he did this night, 18 of 23, 227 yards, but the arm is there. When he's able to get time, the accuracy is there. He can move around. He's very good on his feet. The kid, you and I have talked, he's going to play somewhere and he's going to do a good job. He's just got way too much talent. Amari Glover added a pair of rushing touchdowns for Middletown. Their defense forced 3 turnovers, including a 49-yard interception return for touchdown by Justin McGill. It was just a great effort, and it was against a St. Mark's team, which has really had its back against the wall and needed to win this game. And from what I was told, St. Mark's was down several starters for injury reasons and just couldn't seem to get anything going. They got a field goal. They had a chance in the third quarter to kind of get into it, fell apart. And you can't do that against Middletown. They just, they're just one of those teams you can't make too many mistakes against. No. So St. Mark's is left with basically a win or the season's over against Sally's. And even then, at this point, based on what we've seen, that may not be enough. So it's interesting. But Middletown is going to be one of the top 3-4 seeds, most likely, probably going to be the 3 seed. And they're always dangerous. When it comes to the 3A, it's almost like the seeds don't matter because, like we said, you got to beat everybody anyway, and they're all good teams at that level that are getting into the playoffs. So, but another great season from Middletown. They still have one more game left, of course, and for St. Mark's, a tough way to go out there now, 4-5, and hoping to have a chance at 5-5 with a win over Sally's, but that's a yeoman task over the number 1 seed now.
And I even read somewhere, I think they have to beat Sally's, and I think CR has to beat Dover. I think that's the scenario. Scenarios, yes. Yeah. And nobody quote me on that. I just read it somewhere for that. All right, Caravel 16, DMA 8. Caravel remains undefeated. They got a big showdown with Red Lion coming up when the winner will win District 1 in that automatic bid. The Bucks held DMA to 98 yards, but Marty, I was just as impressed that DMA held Caravel to 16 points. They've been averaging 28 plus, not averaging, 6 times they've scored 28 plus points. They have a 50 on somebody, 40 on somebody, a couple 30s. And so I was shocked at that score. In fact, when I saw it while I was sitting in the press box at Appoquinimink, I thought that might have been the halftime score in the game, not that it was a final score. So very impressed with Matt Carey's defense for DMA. Caravel's rolling along. They've been my pick ever since I saw them play Hodson back, and they look like a Class 3 team. But I was surprised that their offense sputtered, for lack of a better term, against a DMA team that's under 500 at 4-5 right now.
Yeah, DMA is they may end up being the best team in the state not to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They hung with 2 Class 3A teams. They've been very close on other occasions. Their problem is, and I don't know why, they just can't generate any offense when they're playing the better teams. And I know Odell Teal, this is his first true season as the full quarterback. They went with BJ Lena. Different couple things happened last year. So I know he's adjusting to the role. He's also the best runner they have. So it's kind of one of those situations where if you key on him and you can stop him, it's very difficult for them to get anything else going. And that's what happened here. I will say, again, the DMA defense all year has been great for the most part. This score shocked me as well. It was 16-0. And then Malcolm Roy returns a kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion. And then a very bizarre end of this game where Caravel is basically trying to run out the clock and decided to throw a pass, a very odd looking play that could not have been the way they drew it up. Anyway, Tristan Huerta ended up throwing an interception to a kid who was literally 2 yards in front of him. It almost, I don't know if he was trying to dump it out of bounds, but anyway, DMA had a chance. They got down inside, I believe, the Caravel 25-yard line, right around there, and had a couple chances and just weren't able to put it away. Caravel did a great job of shutting things down, but boy, Caravel is they just keep winning. And it's not always great looking. Like there's been a couple of games where they just don't look great. And the mark of a great team is you don't always look great,
right? And you still
and
win.
You still come out with the win.
Right.
That's right. So a great job by Caravel and Coach Reed. Coach Carey is really laying a great foundation at DMA with defense. And again, I want to point out, so we're talking about defense, got to give it up to Caravel too. I mean, their defense at times this year has really stepped up when they needed to. And at the end of this game, they really needed to come up strong to close it out, and they did. So
as we mentioned, Caravel is going to face Red Lion, game situation where we'll talk about it in a minute again, where if Red Lion doesn't win, they may not be in. Caravel is going to be in either way, but and then DMA finishes out with Del Castle, and they're in probably a must win and may still not get in. We're not sure on any of that stuff. So, all right, Mary Kate Johnson, if you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate Johnson with Remax Associates will help you do it as if it was her own. An award-winning realtor with more than 20 years of experience. She helped my wife and I buy our house 18 years ago, sell the other one. Was great on both ends, selling and purchasing. We've since recommended her to dozens of friends who have loved the experience and in turn recommended her to their friends as well. Whether you're upsizing, downsizing, buying for yourself, an aging parent, maybe a child, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates. Let her help you out from start to finish. Her website is marykatej.remax.com. That's marykatej.remax.com. All right, Marty, let's go on to the next game that we have here. I dropped my paper, so I'll pick that back up. Tatel 52, Charter nothing. And I just talked about how we don't usually talk about blowout games, but this one's unique. They had a quarterback injured, so they moved a running back to the quarterback position, and another running back became a household name, maybe. And Marty, this is one of the ones I got wrong when I was on with Benny and Trey. And if I had picked it either way, it would not have been 52-0. Tatel with a statement game for sure.
Yep. And this ended up being basically the de facto district championship game, because whoever won this game was going to be the District 1 champion. And Tatel this was at Charter.
Yep.
And Charter has thrown shutouts for 5 of their last 6 games. They're kind of limping down the stretch here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to get it back together, but Tatel, holy smokes, they just continue rolling. I posted on Twitter, I think it was this morning, where they're on a current 8-game winning streak. The first game of the season, they lost 22-8 to Friends, which in hindsight is very respectable against a Friends team at 2A. That's right. Pretty strong.
Yep.
And probably should have gotten an indication then that there might be something there. But since they've scored 5 times, they've scored more than 50 points. They're beating their opponents during that 8-game win streak 47-5, an average score of 47-5. And this was just an incredible snow job in terms of it was just an avalanche fell on top of Charter there. Rashawn Lamons, which is the kid you're talking about, that they had a quarterback injury. They moved him to quarterback, sort of a situation with DMA But with Lamons, you have some other options in there too, and you can't just focus on him. And boy, does he take advantage of it. His outstanding season continues. 4 of 8 passes, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 193 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown, and he had a 60-yard punt return. So he continues to do everything for this team. RJ Moore is one of those other weapons, a running back. He had 79 yards and a touchdown on 11 carries. Gino Greer out of the backfield had a 20-yard touchdown run. So they're getting it done all kinds of ways. On defense, Jack Homer had just a monster game, 14 tackles, including 5 sacks and 5.5 other tackles for a loss, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. On special teams, Spencer Neidig was 4 for 4 on extra point attempts and averaged 41 yards on his 8 kickoffs. They're dominating in all 3 phases right now. There's just not a weak point with this team. And in the early or the mid part of the season, we started to say, well, Tatnall's looking strong, but there's a lot of good teams in 1A as far as being capable of playing with each other. Tatnall has clearly established themselves as the favorite of this group right now. They're going to go into the playoffs. I think they still have, I can't remember who they had. They might have Tower Hill this coming weekend.
They have Christiana.
Okay,
Yep.
Christiana. So, barring a complete meltdown, Tatnall Hill wins that one too and ends the season on a 9-game win streak. They are just on a absolute roll right now. And congratulations, Coach Brendan Ireton comes in, and they haven't skipped a beat since that first game loss. And you just really get a sense of almost kind of destiny when you see this team and you see the numbers they're putting up and how they're dominating in all 3 phases.
All right, so that brings us to Delmar and Milford. Delmar with a 29-22 win, a close one down there, and Delmar now 6-3, 3-1 in the district. Milford 6-3 and 2-2 in the district, and of course, this sets up the showdown between Delmar and Woodbridge in Week 10 in a winner-take-all game.
And this is another bizarre one. Delmar, again, a little bit of a Jekyll and a Hyde season. 24-0 loss to Friends, not a huge deal. But they lost by 20 points to Laurel a couple weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Then they come back and they beat Milford, a Milford team that Jed Bell had looking really strong. And I would have gotten this one wrong because I really thought Milford would take this one. But Delmar and Dave Hearn, they seem to be ready to play all the time. And they might not have the greatest of weeks every week, but they're right in the hunt. And this is a strange one again, too, because Delmar is in a position, if I remember reading this correctly, if the playoffs were to start today, they wouldn't be in it. Right. And here they are playing for the district championship against Woodbridge. It's 2A has got, I talked about how zany 1A has been all season. 2A hits its peak craziness this weekend.
Right.
If Woodbridge wins that game, Delmar is most likely, barring a lot of help, out of the playoffs. The funny thing is, if Delmar wins this championship, Woodbridge may not make the playoffs, depending upon some crazy results in the other games. So it's really a fun season, what we're coming down to here. But the one thing for sure is Delmar and Dave Hearn, he's got his team in position. Couldn't find any stats, no information on this game. Couldn't get anyone to answer me back. So unfortunately, we don't have anything on these guys. But what they do have is a spot in the district championship game against Woodbridge, or against Woodbridge, excuse me. And it should be a great game, I hope. Both teams have had blowouts. Both teams have had close games. For the district championship, everything on the line. I'm expecting a great game. And again, for the loser, watch out because you may not make it.
Nobody can argue the change that they made to not taking 4 teams from every district, no matter what your record was against any other teams. Not doing that anymore has worked brilliantly.
I agree.
The value of winning the district now has become more important than anything. And, it's going to be interesting as teams plan their schedules going forward. It's kind of like the old days. We always used to say Caesar Rodney started out 0-4. They didn't care because then they started their Cape Henlopen open schedule. Yep. And if they went undefeated, they were in the playoffs, and it usually happened. And that's what this is kind of turning into, is teams are, getting their first few games, playing some teams they know they're going to lose to, which is fine. Your goal was to win the district because that means you're in, no matter what happened the rest of the season. All right, athletes of all ages, unleash your potential with a Win the Day Planner, your key to building winning habits for a lifetime, put together by a local coach, Dan Rigby. He's led Caesar Rodney and Milford High School to multiple championship appearances on the wrestling mat and a combined 3 state titles, but he's worked with athletes of all ages and all ability. This planner is an 18-week sports season, or you can get the newly launched 42-week one that covers the entire year. They've also got a wrestling-specific one out. And basically what it does is it helps your child, or if you're an athlete listening, it helps you plan your day around what you want to get accomplished. And then you basically evaluate it at the end of the day, and you set your next day up based on what you did or didn't accomplish. And so it really, and I was looking at this because I got one for my son, who plays 3 different sports and has a lot to manage in his life. It's really good for adults, people too, who aren't playing sports. It really does. It is a planner. It helps you plan your day. It's kind of like a diary without being a diary. You're not doing a lot of thought stuff. It's more of what you want to get done, what you didn't get done, that type of thing. So definitely recommend it. You can get your print or digital copy today at winthedayplanner.com. That's winthedayplanner.com. There's teams at every level I've seen on social media that are using this Win the Day planner. So just a great piece of, it's not a book, but it is a planner. It's a resource is kind of the best way to put it for athletes of all ages to use. So again, that's winthedayplanner.com. All right, Marty, I'm going to go through some of the games to note from this week. Smyrna 48, St. George's 35. The thing that was most impressive about Smyrna was that they had 5 players score touchdowns, 5 different players score touchdown. What wasn't impressive is that they continue to struggle from the 2-point conversion standpoint. They missed 4 out of 7, so they continued to be under 500 in that. It's burned them a couple times. We'll see if it does when it comes out. They also had a third quarterback in addition to the 2 that they use and swap. They had a third quarterback come in. So their offense seems to be coming around. I was surprised St. George's scored as many points as they did.
I was going to say the defense a little shaky.
St. George's has been struggling. So, they're playing for pride at this point, and pride only. But, John Wilson had to be happy that they scored 35 points there. All right, Del Castle 36, Concord 16. Marty, first time in 39 years that Del Castle has beaten Concord.
That's awesome.
And so it's a great thing. We know their head coach, he says he listens to our podcast on his way home from church, he and his wife. So we apologize that it didn't get out this week before church, but it'll be out on Monday for you.
Kerry Galloway has done a really nice job trying to revive that program. It's baby steps, but they're getting there. And they're still at the 2A level, which it's hard to compete with some of these schools, but he's done a really nice job there.
All right, Sally's beat Hodson 38-19. Significance of that game is Sal's clinched 3A1. Imagine a lot of people would have lost money on that at the beginning of the season. But Gene Deladon has won the games he needed to win. He's done a very nice job in there in his first year as the head coach. Archmere 47, Odessa 21. Archmere now has 5 straight wins, and they can clinch District 2 with a win over Friends next week. And so Archmere is going to be in either way, but I know they would love to call themselves.
And watch, Archmere could be this year's John Appo, because there could be a discussion after the season, because Archmere would be a much lower seeded team than if they win the district title. So it's one of those weird situations again where they kept that Appo rule in place, where the top 3 seeds in 2A get the top 3, the 3 district winners get each of the top 3 seeds.
Dover 35, Cape 7. Dover back in the win column after suffering their first loss the week before. Cape kind of coming back down to earth after one of the biggest wins in Cape history, probably, certainly in the year and a half that Mike Frederick has been there in that win over Smyrna. And then finally, Laurel 34, Lake 20. Lake is now probably out. Again, it's kind of a shame, Marty. I met Jonathan Tyndall in person. He was out volunteering for a Special Olympics event. And nicest guy, came up, introduced himself, said he recognized my voice and loved the podcast, et cetera, et cetera. He was in a boot, still out there volunteering for Special Olympics on his feet for 3 hours. I wish him the best of luck, obviously. Told him, unfortunately, we've been talking about you, but for all the wrong reasons, because we're talking about how much better Lake would be with you there. He is a senior, so unfortunately, he missed the senior season, but he plays baseball, and so he should be back for baseball season. So just a fine young man. But that was a good win for Laurel. I think Laurel needed that win. They've gone up and down here in the second half of the season after opening up with some good wins. And so they should be heading into the playoffs as well, I would think.
And what I heard was this was kind of an emotional game for them. This was right in the aftermath of the 3 teenagers being shot down at Laurel, one of whom I believe was a Laurel student. So it's again, this happened way too often, but again, a community coming together. There was talk of maybe moving the game to Lake Forest. They decided they wanted it in Laurel, and it turned out a great crowd and a great night for the Laurel football team. So a good night for Laurel all around.
So those are your games of note for week number 9. And now it is time for our Green Gridiron Top Performers of the Week. By now, you know about Green Restaurant, started by two local businessmen on Main Street in Newark, and it's quickly grown to locations in Trolley Square, at the Summit Marina on the C&D Canal, Lewis at the Ferry Terminal, and in Kennett Square, and their newest location on the Star Campus in Newark, right across from Delaware Stadium. They become nightly or weekly hangouts, gathering spots for special occasions, or just a new place to try. Menu has something for everyone, some usuals and some peculiars, but best of all, you never leave hungry. My favorite part of Green is knowing that it was started by two Delawareans who I think were sitting around a fire pit in their driveway when they came up with the idea. They love sports. They love the community. They do a lot of work outside of high school sports with nonprofits and stuff. Jim O'Donohue and Lee Michaels are the owners, and we appreciate their support of the podcast for that. And so, Marty, as we always do, we're going to have an honor roll we're going to go through, and then I'll let you announce the Green Gridiron Top Performer of the Week. I'm going to start with Laurel's Xavier Limehouse, 34 carries, 255 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that win over Lake. So, as you said, an emotional game. But Xavier Limehouse, I believe this is the second week in a row we've mentioned him. So he's going to be fun watching in the playoffs. And I'm going to mention Archmere quarterback John Orsini, 162 yards and 5 touchdowns in that win over Odessa. And I had Le Mans, but we already talked about him when we went through their game. So those are my 3 honor rolls, and I'll let you do your honor rolls and roll right into the Green Gridiron Top Performer.
And I have 2 honor rolls. First, Frank Nasta for St. Andrews, quarterback, threw 5 touchdown passes in the Saints win over Seaford, 41-11 over Seaford, which again is a game I would have gotten wrong. Seaford is just, they're so hard to figure out at some of the teams at the 1A level. Next, Friends, who continue to roll along. They lost a game, but they're right back on the winning side again. Ryan Tattersall, 102 rushing yards on 11 carries, 2 touchdowns, 7 for 11, 91 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. So this is, the Friends is right back at it. And I did have one more honor roll, and it's at Howard, and that is Jalen Johnson. And this will kind of lead into our Green Gridiron Top Performer. Jalen Johnson caught 5 touchdown passes in Howard's win. And against Mount Pleasant, I should say, a huge win against Mount Pleasant. 11 catches, 236 yards. His touchdowns were 15, 27, 70 yards in the first quarter, 8 yards in the second, 2 yards in the fourth. Now, somebody has to throw those touchdowns, and that is our Green Gridiron Top Performer. And it's a guy who's been runner-up a number of times, actually. And it's Howard's R.J. Matthews, who every other week, it seems like, is throwing for 7 touchdown passes. You almost get to a point where it seems like we're taking him for granted, and we're not. He's a phenomenal talent. He is our Green Gridiron Top Performer. 434 yards, 7 touchdowns. The Wildcats are 6-3, 3-1 in the district, looking good for the playoffs. Huge senior night game against Mount Pleasant. So, what a way to go out on your senior night for R.J. Matthews, and he earns our Green Gridiron Top Performer.
And as we do each week, we're going to send a gift card to any of the Green restaurants, and we're going to send it to head coach Howard Ritter, Coach Ritter from Howard. I was going to call him Howard, but it's Coach Dan Ritter of Howard, because unfortunately the players are not allowed to receive a prize of any financial significance, which obviously a gift card is. And so we will be putting that in the mail to Dan Ritter, a way to thank the coach and congratulate the coach on producing or being part of producing such an outstanding player in R.J. Matthews, who is our Week 9 Green Gridiron Top Performer. That leads us to the Diamond Hill Top Performance. Diamond Hill Incorporated is celebrating their 20-year anniversary this year. They've been serving all of Delaware and the surrounding areas, all things construction, for 2 decades now, from commercial concrete and site development to residential projects. They've got you covered. For more information, you can email info@diamondhillinc.com. That's info@diamondhillinc.com. And Marty, I've got 2 that I'm going to tell you about, and then I'll let you give your 2 as well. First one is the Tatel defensive line. Jack Homer, Justin Smith, Josh Booth, Owen Mrozinski, and Ben Marvin. They allowed only 2 first downs in their game that when, we've talked about Tatel, and you may have mentioned the 2 first downs, but I want to make sure we got all the names in there. So that's one of my top performances. And the other is the Tattersall family. And this will seem odd, and you may have seen this fact on social media, and that's where I got it. But legendary coach Bob Tattersall, of course, everybody knows who he is, the all-time winningest coach in Delaware. He can now say that his son, his son-in-law, and all 6 grandchildren have scored a touchdown against Tower Hill. And so
I'm sure Tower Hill loved that
I was
stat.
going to say a great stat for the Tattersalls, not so much for Tower Hill. But when Ryan Tattersall scored he scored 4 out of the team's 5 touchdowns, and that officially put him as the 6th and final. I don't know if it's a final grandson or not, but the 6th grandson to do that. So basically 2 generations worth of people, and all of them have scored against Tower Hill. So those are my 2 Diamond Hill top performances.
And I want to say special thanks to Susan Garrity, who sent that information out to the media outlets, because I don't think anyone would have seen that. That's a great nugget.
Yep.
My 2 Diamond Hill top performances are, first, the Salesianum offense. Against I expected their game against Hodgson to be much closer, and it was 31-6, I think, at the worst. And Salesianum, 375 yards of offense, 165 yards rushing, 210 yards passing, 5 different Sal's scored TDs. The defense has always been the driver for these guys, and it continues to be, but Gene's offense is really catching up. We talked every week. Paul Warlow, the former NFL great for the former Delaware great, who went with the Falcons and led the team in tackles, I think, for 3 straight years. He's running the defense now and is doing a phenomenal job. But Gene's offense has sort of taken it to another level now. They got touchdown passes from Ryan Storr and from McBride, I believe. Maybe not from Storr. He ran the offense for the first 3 quarters. McBride threw a touchdown late. And then it's funny, my second one is actually Sal's again, and it's because of Colin Maradick, who hit a 45-yard field goal. Again, that's such a rarity in Delaware football to see somebody from 40 yards out.
Including the University of Delaware.
Exactly. And Delaware State, for that matter. We've seen some interesting kicking down there as well. Colin Maradick, 45-yard field goal. He recovered his own onside kick. He recorded a special teams tackle and went 5 for 5 on PATs. And as we always do, Colin can't do them by himself. Again, we mentioned this a few weeks ago. The long snapper is Frank Holodick. The holder is Brady McBride. And if those 3 aren't in sync, this doesn't work out. So the Sal's offense and the Sal's special teams, led by Colin Maradick, are my Diamond Hill top performance units or teams.
All right, and that are the Diamond Hill top performances for week number 9 of the high school football season. That takes us to our weekly varsity letters. These are guys whose stats we've gotten either from the players, from their friends, from their coaches, or we've seen on social media that we haven't already mentioned. So I'll rattle a couple off, Marty, then turn it over to you. Red Lions, Jack Wilson. He had 5 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. If you do the math, that's 14.6 yards per carry in their 51-0 win over Newark. On defense, he had 12 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery that he ran in for a touchdown. So quite a performance on both sides of the balls. Another kicker. We love promoting the kickers. Red Lions kicker Sam Crossan, 6 for 6 on extra points and 1 for 1 on field goals. That was a 27-yarder. I mentioned, you mentioned St. Andrews beating Seaford. Quarterback Frank Nasta had 5 touchdown passes in that game. And finally, we've mentioned this name a lot. John Parker continues to make up for the fact that their star running back, Jaquan Kilby, is hurt. He had 199 yards and 3 touchdowns in that win over Cape. And then my last varsity letter, Marty, goes to Caesar Rodney's number 74, Thomas Dick. This is a kid, and we had a listener who's been listening to us from the beginning who reached out on Facebook just earlier today, and I think she reached out to you as well.
Yep.
Thomas Dick had a career-ending injury 2 years ago, and instead of just walking away from the sport of football, he came to every practice. He was on the sideline for every game with his number 74 on. He just wasn't healthy enough to play. He was voted as a captain this year. And I don't mean by the coaches, by the players. He was voted as a captain this year. It's his senior year. And here's the best part. On senior night, he got to play in the 4th quarter. I don't know how many snaps it was or anything like that, but it sounded like he was actually playing. It wasn't where they bring him out and they snap the ball. He waves to the crowd and comes off the side. And so number 74, Thomas Dick. I think that's always an incredible story when you hear that of a high school kid who does that. And we had a similar one in our soccer. Real quick, I'll talk about Appoquinimink Soccer, who my son plays for. Dylan, and his last name escapes me, but Dylan tore his ACL in a captain's practice this summer. And he was at every practice. He was at every game. And they did, on senior night, they did have a kickoff so that he could officially be in the game, and then he came right off. He's a golfer, and so he's still got a season to play for. But just an incredible job by student athletes who face such adverse situations, and they still come back and be part of the team.
Well, you took 4 of my 5. So people don't know the show is scripted. We, John and I don't discuss this necessarily beforehand. But I do want to follow up on the one you just had with Thomas Dick. This listener who said she's been listening from the beginning as well also went on to send a note about how much the families absolutely love Sean Strickland and the impact he's had both on and off the field with these kids, what they do pregame, how they handle themselves during the week. The basic what we just got from all of this is that he's been fantastic since he's got there. Coach Candy did a great job while he was there, and we talked about sometimes that you just need a different voice,
right.
And he's been that different voice this year, and the parents seem to really take to him. The players have taken to him. Now it's just a matter of getting things turned around on the field, and they've shown flashes at times at the beginning of the season, one game here late in the season. So Sean Strickland's done a nice job kind of positioning that program to go forward. So congratulations to him, and thank you so much to this reader for pointing out these things. As you said, we love to hear from the parents to let us know these kinds of stories. My last varsity letter goes to Dover junior soccer player Cole Turner, who learned how to place kick last week because 2 of the kids apparently that were injured in that Dover car accident were kickers, which I did not know at first.
Right.
I believe I thought one of them was. Anyway, they did not have a kicker. So this young man, Cole Turner, learned how to kick from the kicking coach of Dover, and came out and hit all 4 of his PAT tries on Friday, and also had a couple tackles on special teams. So this is a kid they yanked off the soccer field, and every team in Delaware out there, and one specifically I'm not going to mention, go to the soccer team, get yourself a kicker. They can make such a big difference for you. So Dover junior soccer player Cole Turner, phenomenal job, a phenomenal job to the Dover staff for getting him ready to go. He had to have nerves, at the wazoo on those 4 kicks, and he's perfect on them. So he's my varsity letter for this week.
All righty, there you go. And the soccer player I was referring to is Dylan Everett, who was the one that tore his ACL and missed the season, but was a captain and with the team from start to finish. So those are your varsity letters for week number 9. All right, what we're going to do kind of now is we're going to kind of combine our games to watch with the playoff scenario. We'll preface all of this by, if you really want to get down into the nitty gritty of the playoffs, go to Sean Green's site, WDEL.com. He's got it all detailed out as he had. I think he started doing it, Marty, in week 3. He used to telling us who would be out of the playoffs. And Sean's a great guy, so I say that in jest, but he puts the time into it. And so if you really want to know the nitty gritty of what exactly has to happen, it's all there. We're not going to get that nitty gritty.
I printed it out. It's 14 pages long. So Sean has put a lot of work into this.
All righty. Oh, and the other thing we'll say is anything that we say, it's not necessarily etched in stone. So because what the experience is over the years is that inevitably that whole draft thing or that whole index thing could come out on Sunday, and that's when it'll come out at 10:30. And I'll remind you that our pod will drop late because of that. We wait for the playoff stuff to come out, and then we do our podcast as soon as it is. So it won't drop at noon, but it'll drop before 6 o'clock. But inevitably, over the years in a lot of sports, the rankings get sent out, and an hour later there's a correction, and so it's a thankless job. And
it is.
So we're not picking on anybody.
I will say one thing they can do to make it easier, and I've said this for 4 straight years now. Please release the indexes after the meeting is over so that everyone can see them, so that the people like Sean who do the work can compare and see where there might have been a problem. Problems could have been avoided for 2 different years in basketball had they done that, because people had done the work beforehand and could have said, hey, you know what? Before you guys go crazy all day putting these out, there's a mistake here. So yeah, Dia, I know it's been a policy for some reason. For 5 years ago, I was able to get them easily. Then all of a sudden it stopped. Hopefully with Dave Baylor, Dave, if you're listening, please get the committees to release their indexes. There's nothing secret about them. It's just math, but we just want to make sure that everything is correct as we compare the people who like to do it at home. That's all.
Well, and as much as the DI talks about being out in the public, that's another way to be out in the public and show people why you got to the conclusion you did. But anyway, so Class 3A, Sally's 1 District 1, we already talked about that. For all intents and purposes, St. Mark's, St. George's, William Penn, and C are out. We talked about how some few magical things could happen with St. Mark's and they might get in. I think the other three are pretty much out. Sussex Central won Division II. And then from that, those other teams should all be in, including a Smyrna team that's going to get in probably with 4 wins, and that's kind of what Sean Green had said, 4 wins at one point.
That could be interesting. It's because it'll be interesting to see how Sussex Central approaches this game now that they have won the district. Now I'm sure the seeds are still up in the air, obviously 1 and 2, but I don't know that the teams care enough about that. Because let's be honest, Smyrna may be a 7 or 8 seed, depending upon what happens in that game. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they play this. But also, there's an outside chance if Sussex Central were to beat Smyrna, that Smyrna does not make it. There's a lot of things that would have to happen, but there is an outside chance. So Smyrna needs to come ready to play like they did this week against St. George's.
All right, so Class 2A outside the bubble right now, and I got this. I'll credit Sean Green for this. Is Milford, Delmar, and Tower Hill. And we talked about Delmar being outside. Marty, you talked about that. So they're outside right now. District 1, Caravel's playing Red Lion. Winner is in. Red Lion might be out if they don't win. And again, a lot of things could change that. District 2, we talked about them. Archmere wins and they win. Otherwise, there could be a 3-way tie that could come down to district points allowed is the tiebreaker that it could get down to. So a lot still to happen in there. District 3, Woodbridge versus Delmar. The winner gets in. So more than any of the other 3 classes, Marty, it is vitally important you win your district in Class 2, at least this year. It is. Because I just talked about how there's a situation, two out of those 3 situations, the loser of what we'll call the district championship game may not make the playoffs this year, where they would have been in anyway. And so that's
Woodbridge, Delmar, Red Line. I mean, the first one with Caravel Red Line is still another one. I mean, Red Line, it's not 100% sure, although they're looking really good.
Right.
But it's so difficult trying to figure out what's going on there. The Archmere Friends, like we said, Archmere, would win the district with a win, but if they lose, things get all kinds of crazy.
Muddled. Anyway, so that's Class 2A. It ended up being exactly what we thought it would be. A muddled mess at the end.
Which is really great. Going into that last week with so much still open. I love it.
Yeah, what would be interesting, Marty, and I'm not doing it, and you probably aren't doing it either, would be to look at using last year's rules.
I thought about
that. Top 4 in every district gets in. What would Week 10 look like? Right. And my guess is we'd be paying attention to very few games at this point.
Most would be locked up by this point.
Most would be locked up. But I remember that last year. I think going into Week 9 last year, 60% of the slots were blocked up or something like that. It was crazy. All right, so let's go with final one with Class 1A. If it ended today, you have 2 teams that are below 500, St. Elizabeth and Glasgow, that would get in. And then you have Seaford, St. Andrews. They're at the 9 and the 10. I would think a lot would have to happen for the 2 of them to get in. But again, we're not going to speculate on that. Tatel clinched a first or second place in their district, which is good enough to get in Class 1. And Polytech took District 2. So that, those two are going to be the top 2 or certainly the top 3 in that district there. So,
and, Glasgow, it's interesting. Not only are they below 500, they're 3 and 6. So this is it's crazy the way things have worked out. We've said all year that how crazy 1A is, but you've got St. Elizabeth's 4 and 5, Glasgow 3 and 6, Seaford, St. Andrews, and Dickinson. Actually, Seaford, St. Andrews, Dickinson, and Conrad are all 3 and 6. They all still have a chance to get into the playoffs. The only team that doesn't, unfortunately, is McCain, who might be playing better than any of those 3 and 6 teams at this point.
They might beat all 3 of them.
Avery McMullen has got this team rolling, but unfortunately their bonus points aren't enough to keep them in the chase at this point. So tune into the show next week, because these brackets could look wild in terms of seeding, in terms of who's in. It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, it sure is. So again, we won't drop our pod at noon, but it'll be dropped by 6 o'clock. We're on we're at the whim of waiting for the brackets to get released to the media. We see them as soon as everybody else does. Want to remind you, Delaware Live Sports will be broadcasting the Smyrna at Sussex Central game, the Lake at Milford game, and the Sal's at St. Mark's game there. So those are 3 you can watch on the live stream. And WDL will be broadcasting either the Sal's at St. Mark's or Apo at Middletown, one of those two games. So if you're looking to see those games, that's where you can do that there. All right, it's time for our Martuscelli Restaurant Group trivia question of the week. They own the Chesapeake Inn, Klondike Kate's, and La Costa Pasta, all three restaurants known for their delectable dishes, cozy ambiance, and exceptional service. And thanks to the Martuscelli Group, one lucky listener each week gets to eat out with a gift card courtesy of the Martuscelli Group. You can enjoy signature crab cakes and other fresh seafood at the Chesapeake Inn, homemade pastas and seafood specialties at La Casa Pasta, or Klondike Kate's famous cheesesteak, egg rolls, and nachos. And I believe that the Martuscelli Group just celebrated the 45th anniversary of La Casa Pasta being open, or the restaurant groups there. So congratulations to them on that. And we can't thank them enough for sponsoring our podcast. So Marty, tell us about last week's trivia contest, and then let our listeners know what this week says.
Last week's contest was DMA started their varsity program. The first time they played a varsity season was in 2006. And the question was, who was the first in-state team they beat? Now, we got a number of answers of West Nottingham, which was right, except it was the out-of-state team that they beat. We wanted the in-state team. We got 4 right answers to the in-state question. It was Red Lion. And the gentleman who won this week is Matt Montgomery, who always gets to us on Facebook through Facebook, not the email. So I'll be reaching out to Matt tonight to ask him for his address, but congratulations to Matt. All right, for this week, I always try to have a tie-in with this week's game, and we're renewing the St. Mark's Salesianum rivalry this season. And one of the things that it's kind of interesting is the teams didn't meet a ton in the postseason during their run, when they were playing each other every year. Of course, they met every year in the regular season for the longest time. The last time St. Mark's won a state title, however, was in 2010. In that year, in the semifinals, they defeated Salesianum. And I can't remember what the final score was. I cut it off here somewhere. I think it was 24-10 or 24-17. But anyway, that doesn't matter. St. Mark's beat Salesianum in the semifinals. I believe it is the only time St. Mark's has ever beaten Salesianum in the postseason. For a chance at a Martuscelli Group gift card, who was the quarterback for St. Mark's during that championship season? The quarterback for St. Mark's during their championship season, their last state championship, which was a Division I state championship in 2010. To get us the answer, do so by Wednesday at 8 p.m. That's the cutoff. Send your answers to delhsfootball@gmail.com. That's delhsfootball@gmail.com. Or direct message John, myself, or our account on Facebook, our joint account for the pod, or on Twitter. So the question is, in the last championship season for St. Mark's, 2010, who was their starting quarterback?
All right, there you have it, the Martuscelli Restaurant Trivia question of the week, and that is going to put a wrap on our Week 9 podcast. Hard to believe we're heading into week number 10. Again, a reminder, the pod will drop late afternoon, hopefully by 6 o'clock on Sunday. We can't wait to see what the brackets look like, and we can't wait to share our thoughts with you on who we think got a good spot, a good seed, and a bad seed. And, as Marty said, anytime a Smyrna football team that a lot of people thought might win the state championship could be an 8 seed, that's going to be an interesting state tournament for sure. Yeah. And we got that situation probably in all 3 classes, so it's going to be exciting. Special thanks to our sponsors, The Grain Restaurant, Martuscelli Restaurant Group, Diamond Hill Incorporated, Mary Kate Johnston with Remax Associates, Dan Rigby, author of the Win the Day Planner, and our title sponsor, websitesforsports.com. That's websites, the number 4 sports.com, for all the information you need about games either during the season or heading into other seasons. That's going to put a wrap on it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being patient, as you're getting this probably about 12 hours later than you normally would have. We look forward to week number 10, and then looking forward to the playoffs next week. Until next week, have a great sports week.